I gave up vacations, birthdays, even my health, just to open my dream coffee shop. The day I finally made it, my own sister stormed in, screaming at me to sign it over or she'd shut it down. I stood there, holding the paper she threw in my face, wondering how family could turn into your worst enemy. And what she did next. It broke something in me I'll never get back. The smell of roasted beans filled the air, deep, warm, grounding. Soft jazz spilled from the speakers in the corner. Two early birds, both retirees from the insurance office across the street, nursed their cups like they were sipping secrets. The sun had barely stretched over the brick buildings of the small South Carolina town, and the world still felt gentle. I had just finished placing the last touch on the corner table, a single blue hyacinth. Her favorite, though she'd never admit it out loud. I used to pick them from behind Grandma's trailer when we were kids. She'd roll her eyes, but she never threw them away. This morning felt heavier than most. 9 years of working double shifts, rebuilding my spine after that construction accident, and socking away every spare dollar. It had all led here. My own coffee shop. And today, she was finally coming to see it. I thought this would be the morning I finally earned her respect. Funny how hope makes you bold. Naive, even. And I didn't know this table would host a war. They used to call me the Shadow. Too quiet, too slow, too sentimental. While she conquered college, New York, and boardrooms with glass walls, I stayed behind. Took care of Mama when the cancer came knocking. Missed every party, skipped every promotion. She once told me, coffee shops are for hipsters, not grown men. But this place wasn't just about coffee. It was about finally having something that was mine. A place where people knew my name for the right reasons. I didn't just build this cafe, I bled for it. So when I sent the invite, I meant every word. Come see what I built, sis. Maybe, just maybe, she'd finally see me. The bell over the door chimed, sharp and final. She walked in like a gust of February wind. Expensive heels, pressed blazer, Bluetooth in one ear, didn't even glance around. Her eyes flicked past the flour, the polished floors, the warm smiles from my regulars. She didn't sit. Without a word, she dropped a manila envelope on the table. I blinked. Good morning to you too, she sighed. Just sign it, Clayton. No, hello, no congratulations. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside, a copy of the property deed. Her name, printed neatly at the bottom, still tied to a portion of the land I had refinanced through the old family estate. My mouth went dry. You didn't ask me. You never ask anyone, she said. Her voice was smooth, not angry, just surgical. I remembered the conversation with the bank, the lawyer, all the paperwork. I must have missed it, some legacy clause from a decade ago. She didn't care. I can't have my name attached to a vanity project, she continued. This taints Dad's name. That hit harder than I let on. My fingers tightened around the paper. You think this taints his name? After everything Clayton. Her tone had that old sharpness, the one that used to make me shrink as a kid. You always take without thinking. This land wasn't yours to play with. I looked around. My customers were pretending not to listen. I could feel the tension thickening like cream in coffee. I built this, I said, quieter than I meant to. No help, no shortcuts, just work. She leaned in, voice lower. You want a medal for doing what adults do? Memories rushed in, her twisting stories to make me look bad. Gaslighting, getting me grounded for things she did. Mom always took her word, Dad too. I was the mistake child, the soft one. This isn't about your cafe, she added. It's about responsibility. I'm not letting you drag our name through mud. I swallowed the heat rising in my chest. You're threatening legal action? I asked. Legal, financial, public. She smiled faintly. I'll make this place uninsurable if I have to. I should have yelled. I should have flipped the table, but I didn't. Instead, I folded the paper slowly, deliberately, and placed it back inside the envelope. You came here to kill something that gave me life, I said. Her face didn't move. I'm not signing. Not today. Silence stretched between us. A few heads turned back toward their coffee, unsure what they'd just witnessed. She didn't argue, just scoffed, turned, and walked out. No goodbye. No glance back. The door closed behind her with a final click. I stood there a while, staring at the envelope. My hands shook, but not from fear. I was prepared to lose money, I whispered. Not her, but maybe I never had her to begin with. And for the first time in 35 years, I didn't bend. After she walked out, silence took her place. I stood there for a moment, hands on the edge of the table, trying to find the version of this morning where things hadn't gone sideways. But that version was gone. Her coffee was still warm, untouched. I picked it up, poured it out slowly into the sink. Then I removed the flour, our flour, from the table and threw it in the trash, not even bothering to look at it a second time. For 10 years, I believed this place would fix something, that maybe, just maybe, it would bring them back together. I'd imagined us laughing again, talking like we used to before ambition and resentment ate everything. On the far wall, a photo of us from 2 decades ago stared back. The 4 of us, young, arms around each other, faking smiles for Mom's old Polaroid. Back when we didn't know how sharp love could cut, I whispered. That phone buzzed again on the counter. Voicemail. It was from a number I hadn't saved. I almost let it go, but curiosity made me tap play. Clayton, it's Roberta, your aunt. I know I'm not supposed to call, but I heard about this morning. Her voice, gravelly, tense, pulled a knot in my chest. I also heard something you need to know. Call me back when you're ready to stop being lied to. I didn't hit delete. Not yet. The smell of the floor cleaner clung to the air as I sat down in the corner booth, same one I used to hide in as a kid during family dinners when they turned sour. That call cracked open a memory I hadn't touched in years. It was Carmen, my other sister. She promised she'd help me with the build-out when I finally got the keys to this place. She made it seem like she was stepping in as a silent partner, talked big numbers, big dreams, said she'd wire funds right before my first construction invoice was due. I never saw a dollar. Worse than that, she ghosted. Wouldn't return a call, a text, nothing. Left me scrambling, alone. I begged the contractor to wait, skipped meals for weeks, slept in the back room with a busted heater during one of the coldest Januaries I remember. When I brought it up months later, my sister, the same one who threw the deed in my face, just shrugged. I tried to warn you about Carmen, she said, but she never had. That's what broke me. It wasn't the money, it was the silence. It's not what they did, it's what they didn't say. That was the week I stopped believing anyone would catch me if I fell. I grabbed the phone again, played the message one more time. Roberta's voice, clearer this time, landed like gravel in my ears. She knew. Your sister. She knew Carmen was backing out. Hell, I think she made her. Said she wanted to see if you'd sink or swim on your own. Said you needed pressure to grow. My stomach turned. She orchestrated it. Watched me drown, just to prove some twisted point. My hands trembled as I stepped out the back door, the afternoon sun fading behind the neighboring buildings. I sat on the cracked crate we kept for deliveries. The alley smelled of wet cardboard and old coffee grounds. I closed my eyes. Sometimes the ones who raise you aren't rooting for you. They're just watching to see if you fall. It wasn't just betrayal. It was design. They'd watched me struggle and called it character building. When I walked back inside, the shop felt smaller, dimmer. The calendar behind the register caught my eye. Circled in red, March 12th, Mom's birthday. She chose today on purpose. I could see it now. Every move she made, every sentence she rehearsed. She didn't come to talk. She came to bury what little was left of our connection. And she did it on the day meant to honor the woman who raised us. I remembered another birthday. I was 10. She told Mom I'd cheated on my math test. I hadn't, but she cried, sold it like a Broadway show. Mom canceled my party, said trust had to be earned. That night, my sister brought me a cupcake with a single candle, smiling. That's the day I learned some apologies come wrapped in ribbons and still cut like knives. I looked at the chalkboard above the bar, the one where I'd written, "In loving memory of Elaine, who taught me to dream with my hands." I grabbed the eraser, wiped half of it clean, then slowly wrote underneath, "Some dreams survive despite their gardeners." I stood back, stared at those words, and felt something shift. The problem wasn't the shop. It wasn't the finances. It wasn't even the betrayals. It was who I was still trying to impress. I locked up early that evening. The sky had started to blush into twilight. I stood outside, staring at the sign above the window. Home brewed, where legacy begins. Legacy or illusion? I slid the phone from my pocket, stared at Roberta's message, and deleted it. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I didn't need more proof. I turned off the lights one by one, but I didn't go home. I sat in the dark, alone, in the same chair where she stood this morning. Only one light stayed on, the flickering one above the bar. Then, a knock at the glass, soft, hesitant, like a memory daring to return. I didn't move when I heard the knock, just sat there, staring at the flickering light above the bar, letting it blink its slow, tired rhythm. Another knock, then a voice. "Clay?" I pushed myself up, walked to the door, and opened it halfway. Jordan stood there, same crooked smile, same worn jacket from years ago. A little older around the eyes, but still him. I was driving by. Saw her storm out earlier. Figured something wasn't right. He looked past me into the dim cafe. "You good?" I didn't answer right away. Just stepped back and let him in. We didn't go to the front. We went straight to the back, the storage room. I hadn't set foot in there all week. Funny how a room with no windows could feel like the safest place in the world. We sat on overturned milk crates, surrounded by towers of coffee sleeves and unopened napkin packs. Jordan looked up at a high shelf. "You still got that box?" I followed his gaze. It sat there, dusty and taped up. "Christmas, do not touch." I didn't answer him. Didn't need to. He shifted forward. "Why do you still keep all their names on your menu, Clay?" I took a breath, slow and long. I thought if I named something after them, they'd feel like they belonged, like they helped build it, like I wasn't trying to do this alone. He blinked. I nodded toward the door. "The Lila Latte, that's hers. Carmen's got the cold brew. Mom's got the mocha." "Elaine's mocha," he murmured. "Damn." "Every cup," I said quietly, "was me trying to say we're okay, without ever having to say it out loud." He sat with that. "You've been trying to earn people who don't even show up." I looked down at my hands. She came in once. Lila. It was maybe 6 months after I opened. Ordered the Lila Latte. Didn't say a word. Sat by the window, stared at her phone, then dumped the whole drink in the trash and walked out. I didn't stop her. Didn't ask why. Didn't even tell anyone. I'd buried that moment deep until now. Jordan leaned back against a box, sighing. "You ever think maybe you built this place for the wrong people?" Before I could answer, he spoke again. "There's something I need to tell you. Should have said it a long time ago." His voice changed, slower, heavier. "Back when I worked here, your sister came to me, offered me money to keep tabs on the cafe. Said she wanted to know if you were drowning." I stared at him. "She what?" "She didn't trust you could run this place. Thought you'd blow it. Said she needed proof." Everything in me clenched. I felt the sting rise behind my eyes, but I blinked it away. "She said she'd clean up the mess if you failed." That was her word. Mess. Jordan looked down. "I didn't take the money, but I didn't tell you either. I was scared she'd make trouble for me." I didn't speak. I just sat there, gripping the edge of the crate until my knuckles turned pale. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about how deep her reach went, how far her doubt stretched. "She watched," I finally said, like I was a lab rat, testing whether I'd break. Jordan was quiet. Then softly, "I'm sorry, Clay." I stood up, walked out of the storage room into the front where the chalkboard menu hung. I picked up the eraser and one by one wiped off their names. Lila, Carmen, even Mom's. I left only one. Clayton's brew. Jordan appeared behind me. "You sure?" I nodded. Maybe love isn't served best cold. Maybe it's not served at all when it's never been real. He reached into his bag, pulled out a jar of beans. "Still roast my own. Want to try?" We brewed a fresh pot in the back. Nothing fancy, just water, beans, thyme. We drank in silence, not because we didn't have words, but because the ones we needed hadn't been invented yet. After a while, Jordan stood. "Let me help with the remodel. Pro bono. This place deserves to feel new." I didn't say yes, didn't say no. Just smiled. That was enough. Hours later, the cafe was quiet again. Jordan had gone. The lights were low. I checked the inbox before locking up, and there it was, a legal envelope, slipped under the door, postmarked. On the corner, scrawled in pen, "You made your choice. Here's mine." I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I locked the cafe, stepped outside, into the dark, into whatever came next. I didn't need to read it to know she meant war. Chapter 4. The Boundary Line. I opened the shop early, not because I had energy to spare, but because I needed to pretend everything was normal. If I stayed busy enough, maybe I wouldn't think about that envelope under the espresso machine, the one with my sister's handwriting in angry loops. The first customer walked in at 7 sharp. I greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes, handed her a fresh cup, and wiped the same countertop twice. The staff didn't ask questions, but I could feel their glances. I was quieter, sharper around the edges. Instead of opening the envelope, I buried it under the machine. Out of sight. Not out of mind. Not yet. "You can ignore a storm," my mother once said, "but you'll still get wet if you don't find shelter." A regular customer, Mary, silver hair and wisdom in her wrinkles, touched my hand as I passed her coffee. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" "Of course," I said, lying with the same ease I used to cover bruises as a kid. And at 1:13 p.m., a man in khakis and city badge walked in, clipboard in hand. I knew immediately he wasn't here for coffee. "Clayton Reeves? City inspections. We received an anonymous tip about unpermitted renovations." "Renovations?" My throat tightened. "We haven't changed anything in years." He was polite, sure, but firm, methodical. Looked around like he was searching for a reason to write me up. This is the only way this could happen. Someone had access to the original blueprints. And a grudge. My sister. She wasn't trying to settle old wounds. She was creating new ones. I led him through the shop. Showed him the back room, the storage, the registers. Nothing had changed. I pulled out dated permits, receipts, anything I could think of. He left with a warning, but no citation. Still, the seed was planted. Doubt. Distrust. I finally peeled the envelope open that night, hands steady, even if my gut wasn't. It wasn't a cease and desist. It was worse. She was contesting the family trust, claiming I misused funds, specifically that I used inheritance money to open the shop, that I manipulated our mother's intent, that I twisted grief into ownership. I didn't, but explaining that wouldn't matter. Not in court. Not to someone who'd already decided I was guilty. I remembered the will, scrawled on lined paper, witnessed by a neighbor with dementia. A mess, barely legal, and filled with phrasing like, "Clayton will know what's right." I funded this place with loans and sweat and a year of eating ramen noodles in the back room. But the house was in my name. She always hated that. The pieces were coming together now. It wasn't about coffee. It never was. It was about power and how she was losing it. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with Miss Moreno. She used to be a bulldog in court. Now she drank chamomile and corrected my grammar with a smile. She read the letter, nodding slowly. "She's not trying to win, Clay. She's trying to wear you down. Emotionally, financially, both. People like her don't need closure. They need control." I asked what I could do. "Start by securing what's yours. Update your bank permissions. Keep logs. Don't let her bait you. And above all, don't react emotionally. Let her think you're rattled. Makes you unpredictable." I walked out of her office, not defeated, but clear. That night, I changed the locks again. Staff didn't ask why. They'd seen enough. One of the baristas, Lexi, barely 22 but already sharper than most, said, "This place is about to be famous for more than coffee." I smiled, hung a sign next to the register. "We serve peace with every cup, but we'll protect what we built." The weather outside had turned. Overcast skies, low grumbles of thunder in the distance. Around 8:30 p.m., I noticed it. Same car. Drove by once. Then again. Then a third time. Same model parked outside her driveway last Christmas. I didn't know if she was in that car, But for the first time, I hoped she was. End of chapter 4. The rain had been falling for hours. Not the kind that dances on rooftops and clears the air, but the kind that seeps in, slow and deliberate, like it's got something to prove. I stood at the cafe window, arms crossed, eyes locked on the rivulets tracing lines down the glass. You live long enough, you stop seeing rain as cleansing. You start seeing it as erosion. I hadn't slept much. Since the envelope arrived, my mind hadn't shut off, just spun in circles. Legal battles, family wars, lies dressed up like concern. I'd been playing defense for too long. My body felt like it was sagging under the weight of things unspoken. A blue plaid umbrella leaned against the corner by the door. Someone must have forgotten it. That umbrella sent me spinning back to a time I hadn't thought about in years. I was 7, waiting outside a school dance, soaked to the bone. My ride never came. I sat on the curb until a janitor finally walked me back inside. "Must have forgot about you," he said. And yeah, that line stayed with me longer than it should have. The truth is, I've been waiting ever since for someone, anyone, to show up for me first. But it's always me, in the rain, holding out hope that this time would be different. I picked up my phone, started typing a message to my sister, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Eventually, I just sat back and let the silence speak. Sometimes, silence says what 1,000 words can't. I opened a blank document on my laptop. No plan, just needed to let something out. What came out wasn't venom or rage, it was quieter than that, like a man writing to a version of himself he hadn't seen in years. "Dear you," I started. "I'm writing this not to be right, but to remember." I didn't name her in the letter, but I didn't have to. Every sentence was a breadcrumb back through years of being talked over, smiled through, manipulated with charm and control. And then it surfaced, something I hadn't thought about since I was maybe 16. I'd overheard my father one night talking to a neighbor over whiskey. "Clayton's just soft. He'll never push back. That's why she walks all over him." It was casual, said like it was obvious, but I'd carried it with me like a stone in my pocket. That night I stopped arguing, not because I had nothing to say, because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of proving them right. I printed the letter, folded it in thirds, labeled the envelope, to be opened when I forget who I am. Then I slid it into a small box in the back room, tucked beneath some old menus and a chipped mug from our opening day. I didn't feel lighter, but I did feel clearer. The next morning I went to see Ms. Moreno. She hadn't aged a day since she stopped practicing law, still sharp as ever with those librarian glasses and that no-nonsense tone. I told her I needed a second look at the trust paperwork. That was the excuse anyway. She saw through it. "You're not here for paperwork, Clayton. You're here because you need someone to say this isn't your fault." She was right, so I said it out loud. "I'm tired of being the better person. It doesn't get you peace. It just gets you ignored." She didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "Peace was never about them. It's about how much of yourself you're willing to lose to keep things quiet." We didn't talk much after that, didn't need to. When I left her place, the rain had stopped, but the sky still looked heavy, like it could go either way. Back at the cafe, I wasn't in the mood to deal with people. But around 4 p.m., Rachel walked in. That alone told me things were off. She never came during business hours. She ordered a black coffee, paid in cash, slid the receipt back across the counter with a folded piece of paper on top. "Heard the rumors," she said. "I'm sure you did. You look like someone who's not angry enough yet. Maybe anger's not the point. Maybe being clear is." She nodded once, then tapped the paper she'd left. "You gave this to me years ago. Maybe you need it back now." After she left, I opened it. My own handwriting stared back at me, shaky but certain. "You don't owe peace to people who profit from your silence." I placed it next to the folded letter in the back room. 2 truths sitting side by side, finally where they belonged. The next morning I posted a sign on the cafe door. "Due to personal matters, the cafe will be closed on Sundays indefinitely." First boundary I'd set in years. And it felt good. Not defiant, just necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. I didn't read it. Another buzz, this one about a family meeting that night. I didn't go. I stayed in the cafe. Empty, quiet, no music, just me and the hum of the fridge. Then, at exactly 9 p.m., the door creaked open. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Some storms knock, others just walk right in, wearing your mother's perfume. I unlocked the door at dawn, letting morning light spill in through the windows. The cafe felt brittle today. Every clink of a cup, every step on the tile sounded louder than it should. I expected pressure, didn't expect betrayal dressed up as civility. Ramona's car was parked curbside, the windows dark. My stomach clenched like it always did when she showed up unannounced. I told myself maybe she just drove past. Then she walked in, heels clicking, breathing confidence, her blazer sharp, her eyes unreadable. "We need that paperwork signed," she said. Soft voice, sharp edge, staff turned quiet. I forced a smile. My cheeks burned. I sucked in a breath, steadying myself. They think I'll buckle. But I built this with every penny I could call mine. She didn't wait for me to respond. She slapped a full legal demand on the table. Partial control, she said. Transfer a slice of property, or she'd shut me down. My heart thundered. I looked around. Barista frozen mid-pour, customer looking down at his latte. Their gazes stuck like pins. "Which clause?" I asked, voice quiet but not weak. Ramona smiled. Polite, like offering tea. "Breach of lease provisions you signed. Altered structure. Unpermitted change. You know this? Or you should." Something cold settled around my spine. I refused. I won't sign something I didn't fully understand. Whispers around. Shock on faces. Her smile widened. Then she slid a red folder across the counter. My lease, my signatures, but they weren't mine. Or at least not exactly. Forged. The ink traced letters I never saw, names I never signed off. She leaned close. We already took care of the legal side. Pain twisted my gut. Betrayal spanned beyond sister. It cut into legal, into contracts, into trust. Staff recoiled. I felt the room shrink. I grabbed the folder, leafed through it. Every line rigged, every clause bent. My trust smashed in that moment, not just by her, but by all who stood silent while she sculpted this trap. I didn't yell, I froze, but the blood in my ears screamed. Then I snapped a photo of the document, my hands trembling. I scanned it to Devin, my lawyer friend who once told me, "Keep records like you expect to fight for them." I saved the receipt, the invoice, notes from the day I ordered construction materials, every proof I'd ever collected. I told Ramona calmly, "I'll review this, might need counsel." She nodded, satisfied for now, as though that phrase "need counsel" signaled weakness, but I meant it more as warning. The day wore on, sun glaring yellow through the front windows, but inside felt dark. I paid vendors early, open ledger, record everything, prepared for what might come, because I know she's not just battling for control, she's trying to break me. Evening came with no relief. I locked up. One by one, lights snapped off. Outside, the sky bruised purple. I crossed to the door, my fingers wrapped tight around the handle. Through the glass, I watched her car pull in. Same one I saw before. She stood under the street lamp, talking, voice too low to hear, her silhouette hard against headlights. "He won't have a choice much longer," I heard her say, tone flat, dangerous. My heart pounded. I locked the door behind me, reached for the sign. Closed. But something in me stirred, fierce and resolute. I won't be snared. I walked in early, before the sun had fully peeled back the horizon. The lights inside still reassured, soft glow over the espresso machine, the scent of roasted beans, fresh sugar in little containers, quiet expectation. My hands traced the countertop, steady enough, but my heart thudded like it knew what today would ask of me. I pulled open the drawer and found the red folder with the forged lease document. Under it, the complaint printed out. And photos, blurry at first, then sharp, of Ramona in that downtown building meeting with an inspector. The same timestamps as the report claimed. My proof, my ammunition. Kukia slipped in behind me. Quiet. She held out her phone. The screen showed a video someone sent her. Ramona speaking in a distant cafe, admitting she accessed blueprints, admitting she bribed a permit official. I stared at the footage. My breath caught. The words she uttered echoed. I made sure there was a complaint. I made sure there was a trap. It wasn't imagination. It was confession. Fear roared under relief. My hands shook. If this goes public, I risk everything. but silence isn't safe anymore. I shut the laptop, called Devin and Aunt Jolene to meet me in the back room. The three of us sat in dim light. I laid all of it out, lease with forged signatures, the complaint that followed, the video. Devin's jaw clenched. Jolene's eyes filled. They always hurt so much when truth bursts in. "You're sure this is legit?" Devin asked. "Yes, I triple-checked." Jolene looked at me. "I'm sorry, Clay. I always thought she was just tough." Her voice cracked. We sat with the weight of this, all of us knowing once I go public, there's no turning back. I set a plan, record a live stream event in the cafe, invite local media, community members, make sure the video is undeniable, post the evidence everywhere. Let truth mingle with daylight. That evening, chairs were arranged tighter than usual. The cafe was packed. Lights overhead soft, warm. People murmured. Ramona arrived, composed but lips pressed thin. I stepped to the front, voice calm but loud enough for the back row. "This is what I want you to see," I said, hitting the play icon. The video projected on the wall, her words, her promises, her power exposed. Photos of signatures, of permits, of lies, faces turned. Ramona tried to interrupt, to shout over the crowd, but someone had muted the mic for her. She sank into silence. I watched betrayal laid bare. I saw people gasp. Some nodded. Some looked away in shame. Truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it frees others, I finally said, voice low. The weight lifted a fraction. Then the room felt too full, too honest. Back in the back room, phones buzzed. A message lit up from Ramona. "This isn't over." I looked out the window. Same car idled at the curb. Someone got out, a figure I didn't recognize, and though I didn't know who stood in the dark, I felt ready for whatever came next. I spent the afternoon sending out final invites, community talk, truth, trust, transparency, press, regulars, even those distant relatives who haven't spoken in years. The cafe smelled of fresh paint, of clean tables, warm lights strung above, projector set up, chairs all lined up as if expecting a sermon, staff backstage whispering, "Is this legal? Will she come?" My shirt simple. No tie. Just me, knowing I carried the evidence. My hands trembled when I shook them, but I smiled, pulse high. This is what I've worked toward. Nervous excitement wrapped around me like winter wind. I remember Mom saying, "When you finally speak, make sure they hear you." Today's that day. As people settled in and dusk deepened outside, I stood and opened the event. I projected the legal documents first. The forged signatures, inspector reports, blueprints with Ramona's name. The crowd's murmur rose. I showed the timeline, how deeds were changed without my knowledge, how inspections were manipulated. I said, "You taught me love must be earned, so consider this your unpaid lesson." Ramona tried to quiet me at first. "This is defamation," she said, but I wasn't shaken. The air crackled, phones lit up, faces turned pale. Triumph warmed me, even though fear sat behind it. I saw her stop smiling. The tide turned. Then came carnage of truth. I called Devin to explain how filings had already gone in. A journalist in the back whispered that the forged complaint had been traced to Ramona's law office. Cousins in the audience stood up. Community leaders stepped away from her. Her empire faltered in half-light as exposed. When she finally exited, defeated, the crowd sighed. I didn't need to shout. I stood by the microphone, voice steady. I announced the name change. "This cafe is now Breathe Wolf." Every family name removed. Menu cleaned of old ghosts. Sign changed. Applause broke, tears glistened. Regulars, strangers, friends, they stood. I felt both free and raw. It wasn't about ownership anymore. It was about walking out of the shadows they've built around me. Legacy isn't inherited. It's what you live for. After the last guest left, the lights dimmed. I shut off the projector, stepped outside into the night air. The street smells cold, of rain threatens. Across the street, a car engine idled. Someone stepped out, silhouette familiar. I held still. Before I could see who, I heard a whispered voice into a phone. "It's begun." My chest tightened. I had won the battle. But this war, maybe it wasn't over after all. The morning light poured in gently through the front windows, painting the cafe in soft gold. Outside, birds chirped between the old oaks, and the first bus rumbled down the street like it always did. But today, it didn't sound heavy. It sounded like rhythm, like life. I stood behind the counter, running a towel across the wood grain. Same countertop I'd scrubbed through storm and fire. But today, it felt different, not just clean, free. The grinder hummed its steady song behind me. Beans cracked and turned into something warm. Familiar. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was preparing for a fight. I glanced toward the community board near the window. Notes pinned and layered, some neat, some scribbled quick. Thank you for speaking up. We needed your story. Still standing thanks to you. A news clip in the middle. A picture of me, mic in hand, the crowd behind. I touched that paper without even meaning to. A breath came up from deep in my ribs. Purpose, peace, and coffee. A couple regulars shuffled in just after 7. Elsie and Darnell. They used to come with folded arms and eyes full of questions. Now they sit close, ask how my day's been, tell me how theirs will go. Elsie brought me a knitted coaster that said, "Truth tastes better hot." Darnell jokes too much, but I let him. The donation jar on the counter, support local women entrepreneurs, was nearly full now. I didn't start that. The community did. They turned pain into purpose alongside me. And maybe that's what hit hardest. This cafe wasn't just mine anymore. It was theirs too, built through something shared. Loss, betrayal, then healing. I noticed an envelope tucked just beneath the door. Handwriting clean, unmistakable. Ramona. I hesitated. A flash of every courtroom word, every lie, every silence that cut deep. I wanted to leave it there, let it rot. But I picked it up. Back behind the counter, I opened it slow. No return address. Just a letter, handwritten, neat. She said she got lost in trying to prove herself, trying to claim what she thought was earned. She said maybe I did deserve better. It wasn't an apology, but it was something, a crack in the armor, a window. I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer next to the register. Not for forgetting, just closure. Not everything heals the way you hope, but some things don't have to fester. I poured a coffee and leaned against the sink. 9 years. Every dollar scraped. Every knife in the back. Every rebuild. I used to think success was proving I belonged at someone else's table. Turns out it's building your own damn table. A photo stuck near the espresso machine. A younger me smiling without knowing what was ahead. I looked at that face and said quietly, "You made it, girl." No one heard, but I felt it, deep. I was setting out the day's pastry tray when the bell above the door jingled again. A man stepped in, mid-30s maybe, holding a leather portfolio. Said he was from a local media company. "I'd love to pitch a documentary about your journey." I smiled, eyes still scanning the cafe like it was a living thing. Then turned back to him. "Maybe," I said, "but only if I get to tell it all. The truth. Every bit.